ሰላም በዚህ ቪዲዮ ሌክቸር ደግሞ የምናየው እንግዲህ ኢንዲጂነስ ኢንክሉሲቭ ቫሉስ ኤንድ ፕራክቲስ የሚለውን ይሆናል። ሶ the term indigenous የሚለው እንግዲህ refers to better understanding of and respect for indigenous culture, develop and enrich appreciation of existing cultural heritage ነው። ስለ አሉ የካልቸራል ሄሪቴጆች ያለን ሪስፔክት ነው and also understanding ነው ማለት ነው። Indigenous way of knowing often discounted and discredited, right? Discounted and discredited and non-scientific, right? Because they were rooted in the history, in the story of people, their language, culture, art, mythology, spirituality, So it was important to recognize the right of indigenous people to land, resource, and sacred sites. So incorporating indigenous way of learning into educational practice has the potential to benefit both indigenous and non-indigenous learners. Right, so the 21st century skill needs in modern curriculum include collaboration, creativity, innovation, problem solving, inquiry, multicultural literacy. So በ21ኛው ሴንቸሪ እንግዲህ ምን ያስፈልገናል? ኮላቦሬሽን ያስፈልገናል። ከሰዎች ጋር አብረን የመስራት ክህሎት፣ ክሬቲቪቲ፣ ኢኖቬሽን፣ ፕሮብለም ሶልቪንግ፣ ኢንኩዌሪ፣ መልቲካልቸራል ሊትሬሲ የምንላቸው በጣም አስፈላጊ ነገሮች ናቸው ማለት ነው። What's indigenous inclusion የሚለውን ስናይ indigenous inclusion defined as what organization state that embrace a cultural norms and enterprise-wide workplace strategies as well as culture which invite the full participations of indigenous people, right? And all aspects of business or operations. So it is where leadership and employees are welcoming of indigenous people, right? Welcoming of indigenous people, their experience and outlooks, where diversity is valued, spirit of reconciliation has been embraced, and call to actions have been acted on in a meaningful way, right? Features of indigenous inclusion, right? What are the features of indigenous inclusions? Inclusion has been embraced as a core competency, right? It's a core competency embedded into organization culture. እንግዲህ ኢንክሉዥን የምንለው ልክ እንደ ኮር ኮምፒተንሲ እና ኢምቤድድ ነው የምናየው ማለት እንደ ዋና ነገር ነው የምናየው። ዋና አስፈላጊ companies share their organization experience and achievement with inclusion and explain how it helps their performance. እንግዲህ ካምፓኒዎች ምን አይዲያቸውን ሸር መደራረግ፣ ኤክስፒሪየንሳቸውን፣ አቺቭመንታቸውን ሸር መደራረግ አለባቸው ነው። right? ለበለጠ ስኬት ማለት ነው። so human rights and responsibilities are promoted and respected. እንግዲህ የሰው ልጅ ምን ራይት እና ሪስፖንሲቢሊቲው ፕሮሞት መደረግ አለበት፣ ሪስፔክት መደረግ አለበት። so employees are free to concern related to basic equity issue ማለት ነው። right? so comprehensive indigenous procurement or recruitment and corporate social responsibility strategy have been developed as part of enterprise wide and coordinated approach መሆን አለበት። and fifth one is indigenous peoples are employed and retained in all areas of organization including the senior leadership and executive position ላይ ማለት ነው. and also there are significant revenue and job gained by indigenous peoples and business through organizational support chain. እንግዲህ ሲግኒፊካንት የሆነ ሪቬኒው አለ ወይም ጆቦች እናገኛለን። ሪቬኒዎችን ወይም ጆቦችን እናገኛለን ማለት ነው። እነዚህ ኢንዲጂነስ የሆኑ ፒፕሎችን ቢዝነሶችን አፕላይ በማድረጋችን ማለት ነው። so indigenous community sustainable gain have been realized as a result of relationship built between the company and the community. So high level of indigenous employment engagement are seen experience in organization Nine, leadership has put into place the resource needed to sustain its indigenous inclusion strategy, and it may have introduced an inclusion policy framework or statement, right? So the last one is indigenous inclusion is integral to mission and visions of the organization, right? It's integral to the mission and visions of the organization no matter. So a 7-stage model of to indigenous inclusion ምላቸው indigenous work has developed 7 stage, right? There is 7-stage workplace model for indigenous inclusion, which is called inclusion continuum. We call it inclusion continuum ላቸዋለን. So the model depicts the roadmap of the organic flow followed to become more inclusive, gradually enabling more effective workplace and employment strategy to be employed. And also the continuum describes organization features, right, competencies needed to each stage to achieve elevated level of performance in indigenous employment, right, business development, community relation, etc. Right? Movement along the continuum depends on companies developing their cultural competency, improving their understanding of indigenous people, their history and culture. Companies' position on the inclusion continuum can be what measured from what? From history and culture. Right, measure from year to year to track and access progress model. So types of inclusion, types of indigenous inclusion policies are there are quite a range of indigenous inclusion policies in used by companies and organizations throughout Canada, right? Ontario and Canada. So the diagram below illustrates how some of these policies align with workplace needs. So some inclusion policies have targeted application to specific area to the workplace, such as employment, indigenous community relation, indigenous business development or procurement, and other inclusion policies strike across the organization, providing an enterprise-wide approach to inclusion, right? So what is an inclusion practice? Inclusion practice is the approach to teaching that recognize the diversity of students, right? It recognizes the diversity of students, enabling all students to access course content, right? To access course content, freely participate in learning activities, and demonstrate their knowledge and strengths in art assessment, right? This is inclusion practice, called inclusion practice, right? So the aim of inclusion is to embrace all, irrespective of race, gender, disability, medical, or any other need, right? So it's about giving equal access and opportunity and getting rid of what? Discrimination and intolerance or removal of barriers. So it affects all aspects of public life. It affects all aspects of public lives. So inclusive practice is about what? Attitude. Inclusive activity, it's all about the attitude, the approach to strategies, talent to be ensured that people are what? Not excluded or isolated, right? It means supporting diversity by accepting welcoming people's difference, promoting what? Equality by equal opportunity for all. This is inclusion practice. So in addition, inclusion practice involves having understanding of the impact that discrimination, inequality, and social exclusion can have on an individual, right? This is inclusion practice. So having an understanding of this ensures appropriate personalized care, support, and support can be given, right? So this enables the individuals to develop self-respect, self-worth, and also to maintain valued role in society. important role in the society. So the environment surrounding them, right? When we just compare inclusive practice with practice which exclude an individual, when we practice this, when it exclude an individual, inclusive practice given an individual more confidence in the care they were receiving, right? So it gives them an option to have what? Input with the care they are having, as they are being given the opportunity to do so. So in the long run, this could improve the service users' healthy, as they still have a confidence in their careers. So practice that excluded the service user could have what consequence on their own health. And for example, if the spokes English and were provided with a care worker, then spoke and understood poor English, could result in them not being able to communicate. So from that, they would like to dinner to whether they are feeling ill and may need to see a doctor, meaning that their health could deteriorate. So inclusive practice in education are based on 7 principles. እንግዲህ እነዚህ ፕሪንሲፕሎችን you have to know, because in the exam maybe appear, so you have to list down when they are just requested or you require on the exam. So the first one is diversity enrich and strengthens all communities. All learners' different learning style and achievement are equally valued, respected, and celebrated by society. All learners are enabled to fulfill their potential by taking into account individual requirements and needs, and support is guaranteed and fully resourced across the whole learning experience. All learners need friendship, support from people of their own age, and all learners and all children and young people are educated together as equal in their local community. So these all are very crucial thing. The inclusive practice in education are, there are 7 principles. There are 7 in number: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Where is the last? So inclusive teaching strategy refers to any numbers of teaching approach that address the need of students with a variety of background, learning modalities and abilities. This strategy continues to overall inclusive learning environment in which students feel equally valued, right? Students feel equally valued. What are the benefits of inclusive practice? What are the benefits? We have already discussed in chapter 2 in detail, but here, so the benefits of inclusive practice are numerous. They are numerous for both students with and without disability, right? We have discussed deeply in chapter 2, but here, as I just recall, the first one is friendship. The second one is increased social initiation, relationship, and networks. So the other one is poor role model for academic. Poor peer role models for academic, social, and behavioral skill. Peer role model. Increase the achievement of individual educational plan goal. Create access to general curriculum. Enhanced skill acquisition and generalization. Increased inclusive in future environment. Greater opportunity for interaction. Higher expectation. Increased school staff collaboration. Increased parent participation, and a lot of things. But here as sample ነው እዚህ የተቀመጡት። ይህን እንግዲህ chapter 4 በዚህ ያለቀ ማለት ነው። ኔክስት chapter 5ን የምንሰራ ይሆናል። chapter 5 chapter 6 ሌሎችንም እንሰራለን። ግን እናንተ ደግሞ ማበርታቻችሁን ማለት ምን ያህል እየተከታተላችሁት እንደሆነ ቪዲዮ ማውቁ ጀስት ምሰጡኝ ላይክ ሼር ሰብስክራይብ በምታደርጉት መጠን ስለሆነ ይህን ቻናል ደግሞ ቀጣይነት ሌሎችን ቪዲዮዎች እንዲሰራ ለቻናሉ እንግዲህ አስተዋጽኦ ለማድረግ ሰብስክራይብ ብታደርጉ ካሁን ነግራችኋለሁ እንግዲህ